You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
Hello, welcome to Japan News. I'm your host Akiko Tema, a food writer and the director of the New York Japanese Culinary Academy, which promotes a deep understanding of Japanese cuisine in America. We are broadcasting live from Brooklyn, New York. This show is all about Japanese food and food culture. We see sushi at every table in the supermarket, but what is beyond sushi? We hear dashi ramen izakaya, but what exactly are they? Japanese food is so mystery for many people, and I try to demystify it in this program with my good guests. My guest today is George Kao, who is the head of sales at Boken Sake, based in New York. Boken Sake is a unique concept. The company collaborates with authentic Japanese sake breweries and produces sake under the Boken brand. And many sake breweries consider expanding to overseas market, but a lot of them are family-owned small businesses without enough resources to make it happen. Boken can effectively create a path for them to get into the American market, and American consumers can have opportunities to taste their precious craft sake. And George is an ideal time to execute Boken's mission with his rich and unique background in Japanese food, in particular Japanese sake. So today we'll discuss the unique concept of Boken Sake, the sake Boken has produced with a 540-year-old brewery, great way to enjoy sake with non-Japanese food, and much, much more. But before we start, Japan is available on the Heritage Radio Network website, as well as on iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify as a podcast. So please go to iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, whichever you listen to, and subscribe to Japan News. And please write a review. We really appreciate your feedback. Now, let's start a conversation with George Kao. Hello, George. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Akiko. Thank you so much for that amazing introduction.
Well, this is all true. So we don't need you for a long time, but you have been always in the best part of Japanese food industry. So first, to get to know you, where are you from and what did you eat when you grew up?
I am born in Taiwan. I am Taiwanese. We moved to the United States when I was 2. When I was 5, my father was transferred to Tokyo for 5 years. So I spent my elementary school days in Tokyo at an international school. And I came back to the States when I was 11, and I've been in the States ever since. In terms of food, my mother was a traditional housewife. I mostly was raised on Taiwanese food, but while we were in Japan, I think the convenience of depachika, the department store basements where the prepared foods were so common and easy to acquire. And I think we may have had Japanese 3-4 times a night. It's just so delicious and so easy to prepare. So that was a marvelous period of my life to get, just acclimated with Japanese lifestyle and foods and whatnot. So that was really the backbone of where I started to learn about Japanese foods, and the rest is history.
I think you primed yourself at the best situation in Japan and here too. So, and you have a very rich background after you left Japan and in Japanese food. So tell us about your unique experiences before you joined Boken Sake.
Well, professionally, I should start with saying I initially wanted to be a banker, just like my grandfather. And I did my internships in Wall Street, and my last internship was in Tokyo with Goldman Sachs. I thought it was smooth sailing. Everything was going to plan according to my engineered fantasy. But at the end of the day, I realized if you wanted to be the best at what you do, you have to have, true passion, and it can't feel like it's work, right? If you're blessed to find work that you love to do, you spring out of bed in the morning, and it's a calling. That's the true blessing. And life is too precious to do something you're not passionate about. So perhaps that was a moment of clarity in my life that I really should tap myself on the back. And I pursued food. I love food. It's delicious. To feed people, to share, conversation, love, and just to put things together was, I think, my calling. So right after college, I joined a company called D'Artagnan. I talked my way into getting a sales position from Ariane Dagan, who's world famous. And she, basically said, George, look at my sales force. Everyone here is either a former chef or went to culinary school. You have neither. Why should I hire you? And I had to think on my feet, but I realized of Asian descent, Right now in New York City, look at how many restaurants are looking to use your duck, to use your foie gras, use your caviar. I see all your sales reps, amazing, bilingual in French, English, Italian. You're in all the great Italian or French restaurants, but you're in zero of the Japanese restaurants. Let me be the guy to bring your food into the Japanese market. And she hired me right there on the spot. So I was blessed to get that first foot in the door in fine dining. I did that for a few years, and there was a company called New York Mutual Trading that was looking to expand their Wagyu program. They interviewed me. I took the position, and 1 week after, there was a mad cow outbreak, and so the Wagyu program was canceled. Oh my
Wow.
goodness, right? Timing is everything in life. So I was kind of a little worried, but the CEO of Mutual came to me and asked me if I would be interested in selling jizake to all the fine dining restaurants in New York City. And this was around 2004, 2005. So this is the wild, wild west still. Sake was not really a big thing. It was perhaps celebrated in a few restaurants, but really we had a lot of work in front of us, and I loved the challenge. So they invested in me, I invested in them, and I got to learn about sake. The first week of doing this, I went on ride withs, and I was able to sell sake with Mr. Sakurai from Dassai. This was when
Mm,
Dassai just came to the States. We were showcasing basically the first Americans to ever taste Dassai was that week. And
wow.
that was one of the greatest introductions to sake I could ever think of. So for the next 7 years or so, we pushed the envelope with showcasing amazing Japanese premium sake to the Americas, starting from all the way up in Maine, all the way down to Florida, and my counterpart handled the West Coast.
Well, just to for listeners who are not familiar with how Japanese sake became popular, so it's funny, right? Right around when you started selling sake, that American market became the biggest export market for Japanese sake
Yes.
producers, and then now the Dasai now it I think accounts for 15% of export by value. It's just one company out of thousand
Mm.
plus sake breweries. So it's kind of like coincidence where maybe both of you just decided to grow the sake industry in America. I'm half joking,
It
but
was yeah, it was a perfect storm. It could have been a more well scripted scenario. Yeah, and it really was something special. But I'm so excited to be back. I think we have this amazing project in front of us, and rather than focusing on Japanese pairings, whether it's just sushi or tempura or even Japanese like hibachi, but we want to push the envelope even more. And what Boken is about is celebrating new American cuisine with Japanese premium sakes.
mm, right. So yeah, but you know that now you became the expert of Japanese sake at one of the top three Japanese the trading companies in New York and in
Mm.
US. So you know about Japanese sake very well. And what is the charm of Japanese sake to you personally?
Oh, the charm. When you taste sake over and over again, the more you learn, the more deeper you fall in love with sake. It's first of all, it has to be delicious, right? And for the majority of sakes that are brought into the United States, we're talking about the top producers, and it's utterly delicious. But when you start learning about what makes sake and how you're able to extract and pull out these flavors and aromas and textures and how to enjoy the sake with temperatures and different vessels. I mean, it is very complicated and very complex. There's a lot of things to consider, but if you can focus on the fundamentals, I think you have a very good backbone to, creating your own adventure, your own journey into sake loving.
Interesting. So, a couple episodes ago, we had a John Gontner,
Yes.
the sensei of sake, and we are having a conversation on how to enjoy sake. But after that conversation, I was thinking, like, if we had a bottle of sake, like, in the fridge, and you don't have to think, you just, it's like a glass of Chardonnay or Sauvignon Blanc, light wine, and you just open it, drink it, it's just nice, right? And it's
Yes.
like that. So, and I think we tend to get a little too formal about drinking sake because it's usually served in Japanese environment, a Japanese restaurant. But it's not that. It's just a beverage. It's like craft beer or something you happen to like and you want to have it often.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. So that's the mindset I really want to have American people to see sake because it's so the point of the conversation with John Gontner, sake is very forgiving, and you're not going to be punished by pairing with something wrong. Like you can drink it by itself like a beer. So, yeah, that's the perception I think you can bring to the American audience.
That's really well put. I think one of Boken's tenets is we're really trying to create sake as the go-to beverage for the Americas and the world ultimately, because it is so forgiving, because it is so easy to drink, and like anything, there's always going to be those amazing pairings that happens once in a while in your life. I think all of us can remember, an amazing pairing with a steak and a red wine. We can remember a wonderful pairing with even just a simple sangria and some paella. But with sake, I think, yeah, it can be the everyday after work first glass, or it could also be a wonderful, thought provoking pairing with your entree.
Mm, right. I think one of the people who does so well in terms of how to enjoy sake, like on a daily basis, is Kato Sake Works.
Mm,
Kato-san, because I went to his new brewery. It's not new anymore, but I went to one summer day and there's picnic tables, and then 20s young kids drinking as if they're drinking beer or cocktail. They're drinking sake, and I was like,
yes.
wow, this is happening. It was very exciting.
Right, and in the heart of Brooklyn, it's very cool. I love it,
Right.
and he has
Right.
cool music playing, and it's just this casual way of expressing your afternoon, and relaxing.
Right. And well, Japanese sake has long history of approximately 2,000 years, but the
Yes.
sake industry has been on a roller coaster over the last several
Yeah.
decades, I think. So could you give us a quick overview of the Japanese sake industry from the
Oof.
past to the current?
Yeah. I think I only qualify to speak for the past 20 years while I've been in the industry, but um, my assessment, and this is just from my own personal view and experience. When I joined sake about 20 years ago, I noticed that the conversation was daiginjo. And when we look at the technology that was developed in order to make daiginjo sakes, it just happened, in the the technology to rice mill came to be early 2000s. I'm sorry, early 20th century, so 1900s. But the push for daiginjos was late 70s, early 80s. And over the time and whatnot, let's say there's a 10-year, 15-year delay to getting into the United States. So we were really coasting in the Daiginjo era.
So
Daiginjos,
for listeners who are not familiar with this, what's the uniqueness of Daiginjo?
yes. So Daiginjo is the most floral and aromatic expression of sake. Um, Sometimes people say it's the best, it's just because there was no period in time in sake making that we're able to mill the rice so perfectly, so evenly to remove the outer shell. The outer shell of the rice, think of it as make a fist. The outer core is lipids and proteins. And the more you polish, the cleaner and purer the starch is in the center, as opposed to table rice. After 10% of the milling of table rice, it's basically very homogeneous, and the ratio is always going to be basically the same. But with sake rice, it's very layered. It's like you're peeling off layers of onions, and when you get past a certain amount, the starch gets cleaner and whiter and purer. So by the time you pass 70% or 30% milled off, you have 70% left. You have basically very clean rice to start creating Tokutei Meishoshu, which is the premium sake tier in Japanese sake making. Once you get down to 60% and 50%, that's when you start seeing the word ginjo and dai ginjo, which means it's heavily polished. You're playing with very pure starch. And sake, unlike wines, it's not from a fruit. It's from a grain. We have to inoculate that starch with a enzyme or a koji king, and that creates a saccharification process, creating starch to sugar. That's how we're getting the sugar in order to then ferment and create alcohol and CO2.
Right. So basically, like Nobu restaurants started to be popular in 90s, and those fancy restaurants to carry Jumai Dejinjo, or those
Yes.
highly polished one, because it's more expensive and you milk down a lot. So you have to pay for the
Yeah.
remaining
And
expensive
this was new,
thing.
right? This was a new way to express sake over the history of 2,000 years. Only the last 50 years have we ever had sake as this clean, this pure, this aromatically floral sake. And so I think it's just the nature of economics. This was something new to the Americas. Sake breweries wanted to show off their, let's call it, the Lexus sedans, the highest grade of sake. But this is a new territory. This is a new land, different food. Don't forget the Toyota Camry. Don't forget the Toyota Highlander. It fits within our category, right? Our ecosystem. Like there's no need to have a Toyota Highlander in Tokyo, right? But here, right, in New York, we have snow, we have heavy rains, we have crazy weather, and an SUV that seats 7 for a family of 4 or 5, 4x4, like that style works. And I kind of equate that to sake. Rather than focusing on daiginjos, why can't we focus on less milk, more flavor, more acidity? And I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit later, but acidity is what I'm interested in. And this is, I think, the future of sake, is where we may tone down the ginjo, daiginjo aromatics, and let's focus on higher acidity for pairability. And I'm borrowing that philosophy from the wine world. You talk to any sommelier out there, they love acid, they love tannin, but we don't have tannin in rice, so let's talk about acid. What high acidic wines pair really well with rich foods? The top answer is Rieslings. Dried Rieslings have higher acidity, therefore it pairs with meats, heartier dishes, entrees, and that's what excites me. I have discovered and have fully committed that the future of sake in the United States is with acidity.
Right, acidity, people may think sour, but it's not. We're talking about balanced acidity, because
Mm-hmm.
if there's no acidity in wine, you get be flubby and you
Mm-hmm.
get tired of it in one sip. So that's what we're talking about. So, well, we'll take a quick break here, and when we come back, we'll dive into Boken's unique partnerships with the century-old sake breweries. So please stay with us.
Today's program is brought to you by Korin, a supplier of Japanese chef knives and restaurant supplies. Korin is proud of their Japanese culture and traditions, but they want you to know that their products are not just for Japanese restaurants. Their knives and tableware bring out the best qualities of food from every culture and fit into every restaurant, from French to Pan-Asian to American. And that is why they're located in New York City, where people from every country in the world come to eat. Korin's Tribeca showroom is home to the most extensive collection of Japanese chef knives in the world, including Japan. Stop by to view their exquisitely designed tableware and the rarest natural sharpening stones. They have a whole range of knife services, from repair and rust removal to reshaping and realigning. Korin is dedicated to this ideal, bringing the highest quality Japanese design to your table so you can experience the unparalleled quality of Japanese craftsmanship
Welcome back.
in
You're
your
listening to
home or
Japan Needs on
restaurant.
HRN
For more
Heritage Radio
information,
Network.
visit
I'm your host,
korin.com.
Kikotema. My guest today is George Kao, who is the head of sales at Boken Sake, based in New York. And he has a very rich and unique background in Japanese food, in particular Japanese sake. So let's talk about Boken. So Boken is an exciting new business. And what is the concept of Boken, and what is Boken's mission?
Boken Sake, we actually just launched 4 weeks ago, and we're very excited to showcase this to the United States. First and foremost, it's delicious. It has to celebrate and enjoy life. But what we're really wanting to do is break the stigma of sake just being paired with Japanese foods. A lot of times, you go to liquor stores or you speak to professionals. Listen, I'm having sushi tonight. What kind of sake should I pair this with? And if we can break out of that mold and perhaps, oh, I'm having roasted lamb chops. What kind of wine or what kind of beverage should I have? And then sake becomes an option in that conversation. I think that's where we'll feel, the most satisfaction. But for the most part, it's really just this pursuit to demystify sake and to create sake as a go-to beverage for the American fabric of life.
Right. So, okay. And by the way, what is the meaning of Boken?
Boken in Japanese means adventure or journey. Our founder, Daisuke Nakajima, he named it that because this was his way of also showing his friends, families, and fellow Americans that we want to take you on a journey and express the love and amazing flavors of sake through Boken.
Yeah, I like the word boken. Like in Japanese, take a risk,
Mm.
literally, but with some expectation and ambition and something exciting is waiting when you say boken. So
Yes,
I
it's a
thought of your
positive.
naming, right?
Yes, very positive.
Yeah, great naming, I have to say. And Boken is founded by Daisuke Nakajima, a
Yes,
wonderful human being with a unique background. So
yes.
who is he?
Oh, Daisuke. He's a brilliant Japanese economist. He started his professional career with the United States Federal Reserve, very elite, super brain power. And then for 18 years, he worked with the premier U.S. equity research firm in Wall Street. And there he honed his skills. He was, the go-to guy for Japan economics policies for, various I don't know, hedge funds and whatnot, portfolio managers. They would really seek out his analysis, and he created a big name for himself. And over his travels through Japan with his clients, he would always host dinners and whatnot, and he would celebrate these small Japanese family-run sake breweries, these artisan little brands that utterly amazing, really so much rich history and stories to be told, but just too small to make it to the Americas. It is not easy to import product, and especially Japanese product, to the States, knowing that the market is so small and whatnot. So, with careful consideration and just a deep respect for his own heritage, he heard a bigger calling in his life, and he stepped down from his very elite position in Wall Street and started Boken Sake.
Mm, right. It's amazing. I got an opportunity to speak to him, and he's like such a disarming, very modest,
Oh yes,
relaxing person. But his passion is real, and we're having a conversation like, why do you do what you do? Right? It's like you have to do it, and you cannot not do it. So
right, right.
that really resonated to me. Like I had the same feeling of you have to live your life today. So yeah, and so you are the ideal talent to achieve Boken's mission, and you have so much love and a passion for sake as well. So what is your role and goal at Boken?
Yeah, when I met Daisuke for the first time, we really resonated. He is also a product of international school in Japan, and I think the bilingual, bicultural elements really uh, put us together. My role at Boken is I'm head of sales at Boken. I'm looking to build the greatest sake sales team in the U.S. We are, passion driven. We're product focus driven, and we stand by. That's we stand by our products, right? I think that's what builds a long professional career, and that's my single most important tenet is you have to really know your product and stand behind it. So the moment I was introduced to Boken, the premise, the vision, the execution, the planning, and then meeting the kudas and meeting, and tasting the products, it was really a done deal. I was immediately drawn back into this world of sake, and I intend to work with Daisuke and our team to educate as many people as possible about premium sake and what Boken is about. And hopefully we can get a glass of Boken in front of everybody and have a kanpai, a cheers, to really celebrate what I think will become one of the greatest beverages to come across the United States.
Yeah, I really hope it's going to happen. And Boken's, I think the strengths and uniqueness is based on its partnerships with authentic sake breweries
Yes.
in Japan. So, what is Boken's principle of finding a brewery partner?
I think when we isolated the issue of acidity, we really were able to narrow down even finer list of partnerships. And I'd like to share just a little story behind some of our partnerships. We're working with a brewery in Akita Prefecture. It's up north in the northern part of Honshu, called Hiraizumi. They are extremely talented. They're very old, and I mean, old, by saying old, that's an understatement. They're, I believe, 500 and like 40 years in the making, 27th generation. But when we resonate with these breweries, it's because we see and we feel the tremendous passion behind the product, but also they're willing to challenge themselves and understand that just creating yesterday's product today isn't what's going to make you great or make the product resonate with the future. We're always constantly listening. We're always constantly asking for feedback to understand what people want, what people appreciate. And if it's still too vague, then it's our job to educate a little bit so that you have the foundation to ask good questions. So Saito-san, the 27th generation Toji and owner of Hiraizumi, has complete faith in us, and we have complete faith in them to work and make products that resonate the Boken mentality. And we have this amazing lineup right now with 3 sakes from Hiraizumi, 1 from Kochi, from Takagi Shuzo, that also resonates with what we feel is the best pairings we can make with new American cuisine.
Right. So I just want to take this Hiraizumi and Honpo Sake Brewery because it's very interesting and easy to understand what you're trying to do, I think. So the company, I mean, the brewery started in 1487.
That's right.
And much beautiful. Like, what? It's crazy. Like, for 27th generation, he is now. Their style is Yamahai, right?
That's
the
correct.
method of production, which I think right, and then you've been talking about acidity, and
Yes.
I think listeners may not, may not be sure about this, what it means, acidity, where it comes from. The wine comes from the grapes, but acidity in sake, in the balanced manner, where does it come from? It's one of the methods of making yamai,
Yes.
right? So can you explain that?
Oh, sure. So just reference. So wine, we have acidity from the fruit. So perhaps different when it's mature, when it's ready to harvest. That's when basically how much acidity you're going to end up with. With sake, I mentioned earlier that there's a saccharification process, and what that is again, we're taking the rice that's pure starch, we're converting it to sugars. When you convert it to sugars, now in the first stage of fermentation, we're trying to create a high yeast count. Fermenting is basically inoculating yeast into water and sugar, and you're able to create alcohol and lactic acids and whatnot. This is Yamahai. Yamahai is the traditional way of making sake. It is extended fermentation time that's needed to create the mother yeast. Today, sake, in order to create a mother yeast, also known as the shubo, there is a expedited way, sokujo, which only takes 2 weeks, 10 to 12 to 14 days. Yamahai style sakes will take 4 weeks, maybe sometimes a few days more. So 28 to 30 days of extensive care creating a small batch of moromi into a higher concentration of yeast. And that's essentially where we're going to get the acidity.
Right. So more exposure to the air, you grow strong bacteria to fight back something bad in the air and during the
Right.
fermentation.
We're trying to create good, nurturing yeast to ferment our product. There are natural yeasts, there's natural microbes in the kura. So this is a balancing act. And if we're able to create a high concentration of positive shubo yeast, then it'll be able to ward off any unwanted microbes and other bacteria that may ruin the sake. So this first stage is so important. There's a famous sake saying, Ichikoji Nimoto San Zukuri. Ichikoji, number one, most important, is the koji making. Number two is here, where the shubo is made, the moto. And number three is the hands-on technique that is made, the craftsmanship behind the sake making.
Interesting, right? So people say wine is made in vineyards, but when it comes to sake is made by sake producers. This Yamahai method is by the Toji producers' decision.
That's
So,
right.
and I met this the Hiraizumi Honpo's the Toji Masaki Saito, and he was very impressive because he knew he had to succeed the business, but he decided to work in ad agency.
That's right.
And I say, he worked with HBO and a completely different, open-minded and forward-minded person. So he knew sake has to have different idea to serve the modern consumers, and he was very open to new style or looking for something exciting to make sake to be enjoyed globally. So I was very impressed by his energy and openness.
Yeah, Saito-san is a very impressive young man. Both the kuras that we're working with, these are 30-something-year-old next generation gentlemen that are assuming the Toji position. And Saito-san, he knew that there was a lot of expectations. He was born into the family, and if it weren't him, then perhaps the kura would not be something that he could pass on to his kids. So he took the real world experience for a few years, engaged in modern society, working with HBO. How much more modern can you get? And then he went back. He went back to his family house. The kura assumed a few years to learn from the previous Toji and also network with a lot of family friends. And when I say family friends, we're talking about Masumi of Nagano and all these other really amazing kuras throughout Japan. They all know the Saito family because they've been around so long, and they really admire his spirit to although embrace tradition. He knows that there is a dire necessity to make modern sake, and I like to think that the style of sake that are focused not just with the aromatics or the floralness of Daiginjo. I call the new world sakes the ones that focus with acidity, and I think Saito-san's sake is the leader, the really is a shining beacon that's going to open up the world of acidity in conversation for sake.
Right. So now I'm curious, what sake have you produced with Hiraizumi Honpo
Oh
and the
yes,
Boken brand?
yes,
Could you tell
yes,
us,
yes.
types, flavor profiles, anything special about them?
Yeah, absolutely. We really admire and love the fact that Hiraizumi is a Yamahai house. They have that tradition going, and we, want to celebrate that. So, all three of our sakes that we work with Hiraizumi are all Yamahais. What makes it extra unique is the type of yeast that Saito-san has decided to adapt. He has a yeast called the number 77 yeast. It is a cousin of the number seven. So the famous Masumi number seven is a standard in making traditional, earthy, just robust sake. And this cousin of number 7, the 77, creates a different acidity. It has a different, it's not as sharp or as rough. So he's able to create a more gilded, a more shinier sake, if you will. And so this sake is a junmai, it's a ginjo, and a yamahai. And I think that's incredibly unique. We're trying to stay away again from daiginjo, so I don't want to bring in those melon and big banana flavors, but I do want a more elegant, rounded sake. And so Saito-san was able to create this hybrid, if you will. It's a yamahai for sure. When you finish, the finish is nice and it has nice sharpness to it, but also very balanced with the flavor of the rice, the water, the minerality, and especially lending to the number 77. We have the same product, different rice, but basically 77 yeast in a nigori form. Our nigori is usu nigori, so it's lightly muddled, it's lightly cloudy, but this gives the ability to pair with spicier dishes or oilier dishes because it almost cleans your palate in a way because it has those velvety texture to it. And finally, Boken Nana, which is Nana is 7 in Japanese, and this is an homage to generations and generations of style that Hiraizumi has been making. And this is our most robust, most earthy sake. And this, I think, pairs extremely well with things like steak or lamb chops or even grilled branzino, the Mediterranean flair. We have garlic, olive oil, and a splash of lemon. The number 77 or Nana both go very, very well with Mediterranean food.
Right. I think sounds like the reason these sake can pair with Western style food sounds like to me it's not just a balanced acidity and some kind of cut the fat, within the meaty stuff, but also the umami is in common with all those meaty Western style
That's
flavors.
100% correct. I sometimes forget to mention. Okay, so the rice is delicious, the umami is pronounced, and then we have acidity. And thank you for reminding me. The umami and acidity must work hand in hand. And I think, from my experience, speaking to so many talented chefs, the greatest chefs that I've ever spoken to all come down to how we're playing and balancing umami, different strains of umami, different amino acids, glutamic, inosinic, guanic. And these are all different types of umami that needs to have proper balance in creating a wonderful display of courses and gastronomic genius. And with sake, we all know sake is tremendously heavy in umami, which gives us an upper hand. We don't have the commonly known acidity like from fruit, so we really do have to be a little bit clever with lactic acid, and the Yamahai Kimoto style sakes, in my opinion, are probably the best way to celebrate that what we're lacking from wine. And so, high umami, great acidity, great flavor and balance with the rice. And I have to mention, all our kuras work with local rice, local water, local yeast, and I think the age of New World sakes, we're allowed to use the word terroir, where we're able to create that correlation, that connection between the wine world and sake now.
Right. And about umami, I think, like people like sugar
Mm,
and fat and umami for survival, right? That's the components to make your body as a human
yes.
being to survive. But we tend to forget about umami. And I think subconsciously we're looking for umami. And that's why I think sake is great with umami rich food and vice versa because it makes sense. It's just a human being because it's the amino acid umami is a protein. So it's directly going into our muscles in a
Yeah,
way.
there's definitely a primal calling for these amino acids that our body definitely needs. And I think subconsciously, as you mentioned, that's what we're craving. So when people taste sake for the first time, and this is the funny thing, I do a lot of research. I ask a lot of questions from people that I run into, that I do sake discussions with and whatnot. Most people tasting sake who are under 30, they love warm sake, and I find that so interesting. It's not the daiginjo that I thought was the easiest to absorb or easiest to understand. It's really the fact that once you warm up sake, the umami is so much more pronounced, and I think that's what people are gravitating towards. And that really just doubles down on my theory that New World sake, umami and acidity, the making it easier to understand based on fundamental cravings from our bodies, really is the answer.
Interesting. Right. I mean, it's almost like you cannot keep drinking sweeter
Mm,
cocktails.
right.
Mm, So that's kind of like how your palate can get tired more quickly or not. So that's another consideration when you
Hmm.
think of
Sure.
pairing food and beverage. So like maybe you can give us some examples of your sake and the food pairings because I
Oh,
think
sure.
it's interesting after talking about this umami. So
Sure. So again, we have Boken number 77. In the wine world, I kind of gravitate towards explaining to people that this is a Riesling. This is something that's it's got a beautiful bouquet, but it's not overpowering with aromatics. But it has a gentle acidic finish. And last time I was at an Italian restaurant, we brought some bottles, and we had this with a meatball parm. It was fantastic. And I actually had this with Saito-san, the Toji, and he couldn't. He was just so proud. He was like, I dreamt of this day where I'm in New York and I'm at this really beautiful Italian restaurant, and I don't have to order a bottle of Chianti. I can have a bottle of sake, and that proved us that sake does transcend and cross boundaries and borders. The other day I was it Newport or was it Providence in Rhode Island? But Rhode Island is famous for their fried clams and fried calamari because it's not just fried, but it's also tossed in a spicy, sometimes peperoncino, sometimes just jalapenos that are fried. But I immediately pulled out Boken Nigori. I knew that the Nigori style sake tends to pair very well with spicy dishes with chili or fried dishes, and this was both. And that was a home run. It was magnificent. So fried calamari, Rhode Island style with nigori was another eye-opening experience. Boken nana, the most robust, earthy, mushroom, heavy type of sake that we carry. That's skirt steak chimichurri. This I made with some friends on a barbecue grill outside, and it didn't disappoint. The rich, I guess, gaminess of skirt steak with ample amounts of fat with a nice, acidic chimichurri sauce. The Bokanano is great. And finally, Ringo. Boken Ringo is from Takagi Shuzo from Kochi Prefecture. This gentleman, Mr. Takagi, is kind of the epitome of a mad scientist, Toji. His family has been working on the Cell 24 yeast developed in Kochi Prefecture just for Kochi Prefecture kuras. This was developed 25, 30 years ago. And they were one of two kuras embracing and just giving it a try over and over again. And the Japanese resiliency, the pursuit of perfection. It wasn't until about 8 years ago they had the eureka moment, and they really nailed down. This is where I love my kudas so much because we all see eye to eye on this. He stayed away from daiginjo, polished that just down to ginjo to 60% rather than 50%. He wanted a little bit of the aromatics, but that wasn't the key. He wanted high acidity and he wanted a buttery concept. And sake is known to be a lactic acid heavy product. This also has a little bit of mallow lactic acid, just like in Chardonnays. So this is my answer to an introduction to Chardonnays. And my intuition was right. I ordered a New England lobster roll, lobster poached in butter, and with a little bit of Maldon salt and celery salt. This hummed. This was just a marvelous expression of where borders did not exist. We were able to create this wonderful pairing with lobster roll and a Japanese sake, Boken Ringo. So these are my favorite pairings so far. But I'm sure, I will be pleasantly surprised with more future pairings as I travel throughout the United States and celebrating new American cuisine with great American
Mm.
chefs.
I am very hungry now.
Yeah.
Those, yeah. But I think basically you said there's no border. I think border was we mentally, sometime in the past we mentally created,
Mm,
which is cultural Japanese food, non-Japanese food. But I think originally, if sake was born in Italy, for example, or I don't know, like in France, that could have been the part of national beverage because
sure.
it's such a universal flavor profile.
Mm,
Um, yeah, so just happened to be we have koji in Japan, but it's such a universal um, I would say labor to convert starch to sugar and alcohol. So, yeah, it's an interesting example how much you can drink sake as you
yes.
want, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, what other brewers are you working with and planning to work with?
So these are our first two breweries that we've partnered with. We still have two or three more kuras in the pipeline that we're discussing, different styles of sake that they're able to produce. We're still testing a few different batches, but I think we're very close to committing to another brewery in Fukuoka. And
Mm,
this will be probably a nama. We'll probably bring in a nama sake. I want to express that nuttiness, that freshness of beautiful artisan sake. And again, local ingredients, local rice, local water, local yeast. We're really pushing that terroir, the conversation within sake.
mm. And for listeners who's not familiar with nama, what's special about nama sake?
Namazake is it's fresh, unpasteurized sake. So there's in sake world, even before Louis Pasteur in France, developed and lent his name to pasteurization. The Japanese knew that by exposing sake to heat for a brief amount of time killed off unwanted microbes, unwanted bacteria, and this elongated and extended the time of shelf stableness, and we were able to create sake that would last, a few months down the road. Today's technology with amazing flash pasteurization, we're able to create sakes that, if not kept in its pristine condition, it does have the chance to stay, alive for a very long time, almost a year, maybe 2 years. But namazakes are special because they don't go through that pasteurization process, much like orange juice, right? Unpasteurized orange juice is utterly delicious, but if you don't
Mm.
pasteurize, it goes bad in 4 days. So you have to understand the give and take.
Yeah, but thanks to the whole refrigerated transportation system really
Correct.
quickly developed and more widely available. So we can have nama like that, and also I think people started to understand the charm of nama. So
Yes,
that's
yes.
exciting,
I mean, we
right?
have, our containers are refrigerated 100%. So we're able to create and kind of suspend, right, that nama sake all the way until it reaches our warehouse and immediately goes to our distributors.
Hmm. Right. Do you think there are many traditional sake breweries that are willing to work with you and explore the new market outside of Japan?
I think so. We every day, every week, we get inquiries. Oh, we heard about this. We saw this on social
Mm.
media. We saw this, from some friends, some restaurants. So we are getting, more and more inquiries, and of course, we want to take each inquiry very seriously. But yeah, it's very humbling at the end of the day, right? It's very humbling that a company that we just launched 4 weeks ago, we're already getting this type of feedback and excitement, not just from restaurants here, but from makers and brewers in Japan that are hearing the story of Boken.
Mm, right. I mean, the Japanese sake industry, which has been really precious and creating, increasing its value in many ways in the world of beverage, sommeliers and everybody, and also the quality of sake, thanks to technology and everybody's efforts. It's been advancing, but because of the hard labor
Mm,
and all those aging population, traditional work style, and everything. It's very hard to maintain that size of the industry, which is really quickly declining. In 1970s, there were 4,000, like
That's right.
3,500
Yeah.
sake breweries. Now it's only around 1,000. So I am really thrilled. What you're doing is really helping those
Mm,
smaller family-owned businesses. And most like breweries are small businesses, right? Like family-owned.
that's right.
So yeah, I think what you're doing is just so
Mm,
exciting.
thank
And
you. Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah.
So what are your plans and dreams?
Our plans and dreams. Um, the plan is to continue to educate. I think sincerity, education, and just the love of what you do, it translates, without just words, but you can see it in everyone's smile. When you come by, you look into each other's eyes, you know that you're onto something great. And when you taste the product and there's a story to be told, this is a full package. It's almost just like a way of life. It's not just the product that we're pushing, but it's a lifestyle that we're pushing. We want to celebrate the rice farmers. We want to celebrate, the logistical, element, the business, the drivers, the people who pack the products, not just only the people making the products, but the full spectrum. And to understand what goes into a bottle of sake, I think is really, really important. When I left the industry and when I came back into sake and I see, people that I recognize, Rachel, Monica, Chris, Sarah, Tim, Jamie. I know I'm leaving out a few names, but everyone's been pushing and showcasing the beautiful the art form of sake, and that's really our dreams, is to continue this legacy and continue doing good work. I think with the help of everybody, who loves sake and promotes and as educators, right? Where we have this great responsibility to tell the story for people who are 6,000 miles away on the other side of the world. So that's our current plans and current dreams.
Right. Yeah, I totally feel how you feel.
Mm,
When I spoke to Saito-san over here, it's Mihompo. He's a young man,
mhm.
and but still carrying the whole history and the value of the sake brewery in his 26th, 7th generation. And it's serious. It's almost aura I felt from his I
Yes,
think his responsibility he's carrying.
right.
So yeah,
Laser focus and full of heart.
right, full heart. All right. So where can we find your updates online
Oh,
and on social media?
sure. We're actually activating our Instagram. The handle is at Drink Boken, one word, DrinkBoken. And on our website, that'll be more where we, load, origin stories, media clippings, sales tools for industry purposes. But that is www.drinkboken.com.
All right. So good luck, and well, keep me posted. You can come back and talk more about your partner breweries and exciting pairings, and that'd be really fun.
Oh, we would love that. And I think it's probably worth mention. You should probably get Daisuke on and talk about the economics of sake, the business side, and
Right.
the logistics. I mean, that's a whole different art form in itself. And I watch him, navigate through, and it's really, really interesting. I think that would be a really, really nice episode. But thank you so much, Akiko. This is so wonderful. I'm so humbled, and thank you for taking the time to get to know me and to getting to know Boken Sake.
Right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, George. So hopefully I will see you soon here.
Yes, yes, thank you.
Right. So listeners, if you have any questions or comments about the show or suggestions for Shotoku's guests, please contact us at japanese@heritageradionetwork.org or kikokatayama.com. Japanese is a weekly program. It is always available at heritageradionetwork.org as well as on iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify as a podcast. Our engineer is Gabriel Jean. Thank you for listening. I will see you next week.